This is Gretchen E.K. Engel, a different kind of geek. And I am here with my Realmakers 2019 recap. So about a month ago, I attended the Realmakers 2019 conference in St. Louis, and it is a faith-based speculative fiction conference for writers. I know that sounds like a rather niche audience, but it's actually quite broad, and we had an amazing complement of faculty and staff this year. We had Brent Weeks was our keynote speaker. Terry Brooks made a special appearance. We had multi-published authors and industry professionals who put on classes. There were publishers there listening to pitches as well as agents, and others offering mentoring sessions from how to write fight scenes or flash fiction, or how to do various different techniques and specialties based on the genre they write. We had a photographer that was doing headshots, just all kinds of great opportunities for the attendees. Now for me, I am part of the planning committee, and it's kind of a working conference for me. I did pitch my manuscript to industry professionals and did attend a couple of the classes, but for the most part, I was there to coordinate our volunteers. And I have to give a big shout out to Havoc Magazine, who supplied quite a few of our volunteers, but also several of the attendees also volunteered to help out with various things where we needed extra people to help appointments run smoother, or helping with our hospitality suite, even offering prayer support, just a lot of different facets of volunteering. And I call them my WD-40 and duct tape, because they help the conference run smoothly and hold it together. And I have to give a huge shout out to all my volunteers. I actually had more volunteers than I had slots for them to fill. So that was really great. It's the first time that's happened, and it was really exciting and made me so happy to see so many people willing to give up some of their conference time to help the conference go so well. And so anyway, a big shout out to them. And now I am going to go over some of the things I bought at Realmakers. I always come home with all kinds of really neat things, and have to budget a little bit for buying books and other book-related things. And so one of the things I got was actually a gift from my roommate. She knows that I enjoy aliens, and I even have this turtle that I claim is a alien from Roswell, and have a whole backstory. And I have another that's a snail that supposedly came in from Area 51. And so she gave me this hat from the Johnson Space Center, and on the back I have pins. I have a denim jacket that I wear that I have pins on. That's actually where these are going to go, but I put them on this hat to show them off. And so anyway, that's part of the things I got, but actually, like I said, some of these were gifts. So here are some of the swag that I got. They were either gifts or related to Realmakers. The first is this pen from H.L. Burks, The Heart of the Curiosity. And that's a cover reveal and book review I've already done. And I actually won two of these, one for me and one for someone else. So I actually gave it to my roommate because she also wrote a short story about snails. So it was kind of fitting to give her the other one that I won. And then this one I actually got because Grace Bridges, one of the mentor attendees, came to visit with me from New Zealand, and we went to Painted Desert and Petrified Forest, and I bought this pin which says National Park Geek, and fitting for a different kind of geek. I truly am a different kind of geek. I grew up going to a lot of America's national parks, and I live fairly close to both the Painted Desert, Petrified Forest, which is about an hour from where I live, and the Grand Canyon, which isn't too much farther, maybe 3 or 4 hours away. So that's very fitting for me. And then my roommate gave me this, which is a pin commemorating the 50th landing of the moon landing. And I'm a Purdue engineering graduate, so that's Apollo and so forth, and the space program is near and dear to my heart, with having so many Purdue engineers that were also part of the space program, and specifically Apollo. And then this is a pen that I got from Steve Raza, who's one of the authors that attends. And so again, I like to get a lot of swag. You'll see some other things I bought that are beyond books, that are related to various authors and book series. So I bought this bracelet which says "Fearfully and Wonderfully Made," which is my writing verse. Most of the stories I write are centered around the idea that God created us and that we're beautiful and created for a specific purpose. So I love bracelets, so I really, this is something I wear a lot. it's pretty much around my wrist most of the time. And it just means so much to me because it's such a touchstone to my writing and why I write. This is another piece that means a lot to me. It's a pendant necklace with a kind of steampunk key on it. And it was made by Kat Heckenbach, who is an artist and author. And she wrote a series called the Talk Island series, which Kat is one of my all-time favorite authors. And her Talk Island series is one of my all-time favorite series. And this particular pendant, not only do I love keys and their symbology and so forth, this is very meaningful to me because she asked me to beta read her book, Legacy Rewound, which is the third book in the Talk Island series. And so this pendant really commemorates something that I was really honored to be able to be a part of. And this is a very meaningful piece of jewelry for me. Another non-book item I bought was this candle, which is from Lindsay Franklin's book, The Story Raider, which is the sequel to The Story Peddler. And they're two really great books. I'm really enjoying this series, and this candle just smells really good. It's kind of a masculine, almost kind of leathery smelling book, and I think it's supposed to smell like a pirate, but like in a good way. Anyway, I love candles, and this one I just really enjoy, and will probably burn it specifically while I'm writing as sort of a reward. I have another candle that I already am burning right now, and this one's probably going to be the next one in that series of inspirational candles for me while I write. So, you'll probably hear me say that I'm actually not a big fan of epic fantasy, but when I find an author that is really good at writing it, I am all over reading epic fantasy. And so, one of the first ones I bought was King's Blood by Jill Williamson. And I have read the first book in the series and I really enjoyed it. But also I had a mentoring session with her because one of the things I was getting with feedback with my manuscript was I had too many characters and too many locations and so forth. So she is a master at this, and so I sat down and picked at her brain with how to do, and also maps as well. And so I talked to her about maps, I talked to her about how to tame down a large story world and a large cast of characters. And so I was really thankful to have that time with her to hone my own craft. And so, but again, this is a fantastic story. And the reason I picked her for a mentoring appointment was because she does epic fantasy really well, and especially managing a large cast with a wide story world. And another author is Ronnie Kendig, and I had a mentoring session with her as well. And I just love her story. And she and I have this fun little kind of in story thing, is that she's a very big name in military suspense and a very well-known author. And I was there at the first Realmaker she attended and was completely fangirling. And she laughs about it because she had looked forward to going to Realmakers to be somewhat incognito because nobody really knew her in the science fiction fantasy world. And now she has entered the world of science fiction fantasy. She's got a new series coming out. And she's kind of an auto buy. I pretty much own every one of her books, both genres, both her fantasy and her military fiction. And this one is Firion, which is the third book in her Abiasa's Fire series. And I really, really like this series, and I'm really excited to read the third book because I just know it's going to tie together a lot of loose ends that have come up through the other two books, and it's just a great story, and so I'm looking forward to finishing out that series. For the girl who claims she doesn't like fantasy, I own quite a few fantasy books, and I picked up a couple of more. And this is a case where I discovered the author through their short fiction and then decided to try their long fiction, which is something I commonly do. And so the first one is The Shard and the Shield by Laura Van Onderdonk-Ba. And I've read several short stories, and then I read her standalone Songweaver's Vow, and now I'm trying this new series that she's released, and the first book is The Shard and the Shield. So I'm really excited to read that, but again, it's somebody who I've gotten into her fantasy through other books that she's read or written. And then also C.W. Breyer's Whispers from the Depths. He wrote a series of short stories which are just fantastic. We're talking, he reminds me of Ray Bradbury or Edgar Allan Poe with lots of twists and turns and kind of even a horror element to it. And that's the same thing with Whispers from the Depths. So it's kind of a fantasy and set with that kind of setting, but there's also sort of a horror element to it that really brings some depth and plus some just great psychological morality tale type theme to it that I just made this book fantastic. I actually have already read it in ebook and just bought the paperback when I was at Rome. I got a couple of children's books for some young cousins of mine, and they're from the Willoughby series by Pam Halter, and they're about this dragon named Willoughby and his various adventures. And this one's called Willoughby Goes a Wee Bit Batty, and it has this adorable bat to go with this adorable dragon, two characters that are creatures that I love. And so anyway, super cute book, and I'm sure that they will really enjoy it. And I myself had to pick up a copy of Pam's grown-up novel, The Fairy Eater, which has these really creepy, cool fairies kind of being strung up. I'm very intrigued. I've heard great things about this book, and I'm excited to read it, and excited for her first book for grown-ups as well as her children's books. And talking about stories for grown-ups that are based on our childhood as well, I picked up a copy of Kill the Beast by Michelle Harper, which I cannot resist fairy tale retellings, and Beauty and the Beast is one of my absolute all-time favorites, so I'm really excited to read this one. Last year she gave away copies of the prequel novella for this, and it just whetted my appetite, so I've been really, really looking forward to reading this, especially when the heroine, Ro, is also Little Red Riding Hood, and she's out to kill the beast. So this is going to be a really fun read. I've heard great things about it as well. And I also enjoy young adult books, and Grace Bridges, who, like I mentioned earlier, came to visit us, also has a young adult series about these superpowers that these characters who live in New Zealand get from the volcanic geyser activity and the hot springs in the area. And Grace and I are both kind of obsessed with hot springs, and so we just geek out over that kind of thing with hot springs and volcanic activity. These places take place in New Zealand, and there's a fun series. They remind me a lot of kind of Scooby-Doo in a good way. They're just fun with great characters, both the villains and the cast of heroes, and it's a wide age range of characters, which I think is neat too. So even though it's a young adult book, there's a lot of grown-up characters in there that form kind of a team, so it's just a really neat group dynamic as well. And then you probably saw my review and cover reveal for Keen, and I absolutely just loved this novel, and so I was excited to get my paperback copy of it as well, since I already owned it in ebook. But I always try to get some of my favorite authors or books that I particularly enjoy. I usually try to get a paperback copy, even if I never actually open it up and read it. I usually read an ebook. But like to pick up paperbacks as well for the books that I particularly. So one genre I really enjoy along with steampunk is urban fantasy. Those are probably my top two favorite genres. And this one's called The Echo Watch by Steve Raza, and I've read a couple of his books and several of his short stories. And he's an author I really enjoy, so I got a copy of this one and look forward to reading it. And then I got this copy of The Breeding by Avalee Jerome, which is my current read, and I expect to see a review of this one really soon because I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I love it because it takes place in Arizona, in Phoenix, where I lived for several years. So there's a lot of fun with oh, I know that place, I know that place. I totally understand when you're talking about this neighborhood or that neighborhood or this suburb or that suburb. So that adds an extra dimension, but really good if you're a fan of Peretti type books or Supernatural, the show. This is really good. It's kind of a demonology story, so I really enjoy that, and kind of ties in with alien theory. And anyway, it's really good. So like I said, expect a spoiler-free review of The Breeding very soon. And another book that you can expect to see a review of really soon is Paranormia by Paul Regner. As I mentioned, he's just become one of my go-to favorites because he is so funny. His Space trilogy, and now he has this Paranormia, which is another urban fantasy, just a lot of fun. Again, for the people that like Supernatural and those kind of shows, Paranormia is right up your alley. It is just a lot of fun, and like I said, I expect this to be one of my next reviews. So I hope you enjoyed the peek into my Realmakers haul. There are a couple of books that I actually purchased but didn't have copies of yet because they sold out. One of them is Fight Right by Carla Hoke, which is a reference book for authors on how to write fight scenes in certain medical situations and so forth. And even though I don't do a lot of action and fighting scenes. I do have some, and I know I will use that book quite a bit as a reference. And the other one is The Heart of the Curiosity by H.L. Burke, which I've actually already reviewed. I own it in ebook, and I just wanted a paperback of it because it is a book that I enjoyed a lot, and the books I enjoy, I like to have paperbacks or hard copies as well as the ebook. So if you liked this video, push the like button. If you want spoiler-free reviews of speculative fiction books and maybe a few other genres thrown in, hit the subscribe button. And if you want to be notified of when I post a new video, click the bell icon. And that is it for now, so geek out!